The next one's force majeure. Is there any crazy stories from that?
Look,
Not in my
COVID
space.
knocked that one out of the park. I mean,
Oh yeah.
from my perspective, like, look,
I've been
20
from
years
years, yeah.
Yeah, 20 years ago when I was in law school, it was like, well, what if it rains on your wedding day? Like, is that an act of God? And like, can you get out of the contract? And it was like, okay, I mean, it was just kind of this like theoretical, like, look, if lightning strikes and you're supposed to fix something and lightning strikes and destroys it, well, then you're excused from the contract because there's nothing there to fix anymore, right? So that's it. But then, boy, howdy, COVID really, really put this, kind of, I don't want to say obsolete, but really got down on it, and whether or not the COVID pandemic classified as, an act of God or things beyond the control of either one of the parties that, shutting down, all these types of things. And so massive amounts of litigation have come out about it. Now, most of the MSAs that I have been reviewing, that is like, if there are no other changes, there's a change to that clause that will include pandemic or epidemic, and they will insert those two words into them. So, lessons learned, I guess, of, from COVID.
You got to add that act of China language into your force majeure.
That's it.
Man.
Let's see. So we got termination. Really, from a landman's perspective, we've hit on term and termination. Typically, what you see, the company gets longer or shorter notice to fire you. You have to give them longer notice to fire them. That's just the relationship. It's the one-sided nature of it, and that's fine. Really, the practical thing that you want to address is typically if they're going to go through a process of terminating your work order or terminating your MSA, something went wrong, right? I can't say that I've ever been through the process of a termination, where it got that nasty, where they terminated the service agreement. But you do want to account for things like if they're going to terminate a work order and you are working for a client that's very proper with their maintenance up there, terminating their work orders and things like that, that you account for demobilization. If you've got people in the field, and I'm putting the landman's hat on. If you have people in the field and they're in North Dakota and they moved an RV up there and, or they're working in the courthouse or they're doing whatever, and the client calls, says, stop today. Well, like these people are, it's going to take me an hour to call all these people, and they need to demobilize. They maybe need to secure all the commitments that they had, finish leasing, do whatever that your instructions do. So I always just try to add, will be paid for the services rendered up to termination and any demobilization thereafter. And it covers you. Again, not a problem until it's a problem. So you just want to try to account for it.
Yeah, and I just want to back up real quick and hit the liability and indemnification section. It's probably the most important outside of getting paid and everything provision in these MSAs. The goal is, again, big picture is you're going to handle your business. I'm going to handle my business. I'll be responsible for what I do. You be responsible for what you do. And even though the concept is that simple, the wording gets horrifically mangled a lot of the times. And
every time.
And states, Texas has its own requirements. Louisiana has its own requirements. There are anti-indemnity acts, but then there are safe harbor provisions. There are all of these different things. And even though folks that mean well don't always get it right. And so if nothing else, it's my recommendation to have somebody take a look at just that specific provision and say, does this meet with wherever we're doing the work and the requirements that we want? We look at Texas ones all the time. And does this say what I think it says? It's going to have company group defined. It's going to have contractor group defined, and it's going to be you and the independent contractors and your subcontractors and their subcontractors of all tiers and affiliates. And anyway, you want to make sure you know what you're signing up for. And then a lot of times with that, as Brent was talking about, is, there's insurance requirements. Do you have the right insurance? And you have different things. We've sent MSAs that talk about, providing for maritime and longshoremen. And they're like, well, this isn't applicable. We don't need this. Great. Cross that off. Fantastic. I don't want people to have insurance they don't need to have, but I do want them to have the level that they do need to have and what makes sense of different things. And those can get real tricky. And it's probably where I've seen the most litigation come out of is on that liability and indemnification clauses. in MSAs, and it's hugely important. So I apologize for backtracking a little bit, but
I think I actually skipped it.
it's a good
I
deal.
did
Yeah,
skip it.
yeah.
It is a big deal.
And it's a pain. It's a real that's like the Brussels sprouts before Brussels sprouts went through this renovation of the greens. It's tough sledding there.
Yeah, the simple fix, and it's probably about a 50-50 roll of the dice how willing our clients are willing to work with us on modifications to that language, because they know it's that important. Like their legal is like, put it all on them. And we're like, I can't carry that. But typically, if I just try to think of cross indemnity instead of I will be, you indemnify me, it's we will indemnify each other, and the other party, and just kind of really add that language so that instead of it being pointed one way, it flows both ways, as Molly referenced. And really that's, if you kind of keep it simple, generally you can work it through. If you get too heavy with the pen, then some attorney will see it and say, well, they're working for us.
Yeah. And in Texas, you actually have to write the word negligence. Like, just do it, right? There's the express negligence rule, and just make it easier. Just use the word negligence in there.
That's right. You got
That's
it.
what I got. Yeah.
Yeah. There's typically, and you see it, another thing to hit on is kind of outside of that is it might fall under miscellaneous provisions, but it's kind of in the same vein. I see it a lot in this part of an MSA. It's the lien language, right? And most MSAs will say, you service provider will not cause a lien to be placed on, my assets, right? And I get that, right? And it's very hard to get that out of an agreement in general. The compromise for us tends to be, we will not allow a justifiable lien to be placed on your assets. There's nothing stopping anyone from filing a lien on anything. That's just the reality. I can have some crazy somebody file a lien on something they have no right. As a service provider, you need to be able to at least defend, right? You got to be able to defend an unjustifiable lien. I need to be able to dispute it, get it waived, get it pushed out, instead of being forced to settle it. Like a lot of MSAs say I have to. They say you shall not let a lien be filed. And therefore the implications you have to settle it. Who wants to do that? It may not be justified. And we've had that happen through our career, through our times, a number of times. Some crazy somebody files some crazy lien, and we got to go, get it cleaned up. So as a service provider, if you can just put language that says, you have to be able to, no unjustified lien shall be filed. Typically, if they're reasonable, they'll understand that and let it go. Little note there from history, past experience.